All right, well, good morning. I want to thank you all for being here today. Certainly want to thank all of the elected officials and GNO Inc. for hosting us today for this important announcement. You know, we all recognize that the city of New Orleans, we recognize that it is recognized for carnival season. And carnival season comes with much anticipated fun and excitement. Conversely, today is the start of hurricane season, a season that unfortunately brings anxiety to this state and to folks like Russell Hebert and Steve Bourgeois. Russell and his wife built their home back in 1972. Steve and his family have been living in theirs for over 57 years. Both of them have been enrolled in the National Flood Insurance Program, which is mandatory for all government-backed mortgages. They both live in a parish whose citizens have taxed themselves with the hope of mitigating damages that can be caused from severe flooding and hurricanes. Today, that parish, as well as many other parishes along the coast, have constructed levees, installed pumps, and other protection mechanisms to protect their citizens. Yet today, Russell's flood insurance, which cost him a little over $3,000 2 years ago, now they're requiring him to pay $5,600 a year for the same coverage. Steve, whose premium was as little as $600, he's now being required to pay over $6,000. All of this is thanks to FEMA's new Risk Rating 2.0. Both of these gentlemen and their families have struggled to do everything they could to stay in their homes, but it's getting to the point where they're being driven out by the federal government. But Russell and Steve are not alone. We could leave this building downtown and drive 10 minutes in either direction and find homeowners in the same boat. In fact, the average cost of flood insurance in Algiers is up 284%. In New Orleans East, 118%. In Lakeview, 112%. Before Risk Rating 2.0, FEMA used the same rating system for over 52 years, basing flood insurance premiums on historical and discernible data. When Congress put FEMA in charge of the National Flood Insurance Program back in 1968, the goal was to make flood insurance coverage affordable and available so that those who may be a victim of a flood would not be overly reliant on post-flood financial and disaster relief. And that has worked for over half a century. I'll be the first to say that the federal government has assisted Louisiana through many horrible storms and floods, and we should recognize that, and we appreciate that, along with our congressional delegation who has done a great job of aiding the state. In 2020 alone, the National Flood Insurance Program issued more than 5 million flood insurance policies, providing over $1.3 trillion of coverage in Louisiana. And that support has not only helped many of our neighbors rebuild after floods, but it's also encouraged the mitigation efforts like levee systems and drainage projects that are supposed to further reduce that cost. I want to also acknowledge that there are some great people that work in these agencies. And there are folks in those agencies who care deeply about people in the state of Louisiana and elsewhere around this country. But once again, the bureaucracy and the armchair theorists in government have taken something that has worked and shrouded it in mystery and made things worse. In fact, I would submit that the Risk Rating 2.0 flood insurance policy has now become a natural disaster of its own, now placing Louisiana families on a path to foreclosure regardless of race or economic means. Adding insult to injury, there's no rhyme or reason for these changes. FEMA hired an outside agency to design a new risk model, and their system went into effect October 1st of 2021. And since that time, we collectively, the people standing behind me and many other elected officials, including congressional members, have been asking FEMA for greater transparency to understand how they're coming up with the exorbitant policy premium increases. Yet FEMA continued to push their policy through without notice, without comment, based upon secret decisions and secret math formed by hypothetical events and some crystal ball predictions. I mean, even FEMA recognizes that NOAA cannot always predict both the direction, the path, or the strength of hurricanes. But now they believe, for some strange reason, that their model can predict with better accuracy than NOAA can predict a hurricane, that they can predict future flooding in areas that never flooded before. And this type of prophecy can't even be found on Jackson Square. This policy is completely disrupting to the housing market and the business climate of our state, and is further driving people out of this state, both families and businesses. Today, the people you see standing with me are the leaders who know that their constituents cannot continue to afford the current cost of flood insurance. And they know that it will drive people out of the state. We're also joined, although not present today, but in the litigation that's forthcoming today, states such as Mississippi, our neighbor to the east, whose leaders such as the Attorney General Lynn Fitch and other legislators have joined us in this suit and expressed concern because they too are seeing the same thing on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. If we're not able to contain this problem and force FEMA to recognize that mitigation action in this state, the things that these people are doing, both here in the city of New Orleans and the parishes along the Gulf Coast, that levees that we're actually building actually exist, then that will further complicate the outward migration problem that Louisiana has. You see, because building levees, using pumps, and other flood control measures should be calculated into these premiums the same way that your auto insurance calculates additional safety measures in the cars that you buy. We all know, you buy a car, you go back to your insurance, does it have does it have an airbag, passenger side airbag, the little alarm that tells you if you're going to hit something behind you. All of those things allow car insurance to give you, the car insurance companies to give you a discount. But yet FEMA has given no discount. Let me back up. They gave Mr. Russell $11 for all of the great work that the levee system in Terrebonne Parish has done, which, by the way, has not flooded since Rita. And Steve's house gets no discount, and guess what? He has never flooded, and he's been there for 57 years. So after repeatedly asking for transparency, and after repeated cries from our congressional delegation, and with Louisiana now facing many Louisianans now facing mass foreclosures and further outward migration, we are going to take action. And we today are going to file suit against FEMA in their risk assessment, in their 2.0 risk rating. We will do everything that we legally can. I can tell you that 8 years ago, we created a Solicitor General's office specifically for these types of purposes. This is probably the case that is now going to sweep the broadest around this state, under which this office is going to embark upon, that is going to impact so many of our citizens' lives. We don't want the flood insurance policy premiums to be cloaked in some sort of mystery. We want reasonable, reliable premiums so that Louisiana can grow its economy. And so with that, I would like to turn it over to our Solicitor General, Liz Murrell.
Thank you, Jeff. FEMA renamed this program Equity in Action Risk Risk 2.0 when the Biden administration came into office. And I cannot think of a program in the federal government that could be more misnamed. This program is so deeply inequitable to the people, not only of our state, but people around the country, and it affects us from top to bottom. It's not just a coastal issue, although it does deeply, deeply impact our coastal communities. It impacts working communities. It impacts anybody who lives near water, and in Louisiana, we certainly understand that we are surrounded by a lot of water. So I want to recognize a couple of people in helping pull this together, because we didn't set out to sue FEMA. We set out years ago to work with FEMA and to try and get FEMA to cooperate with us and to take advantage of the immense amount of expertise that we have to offer in this area. I think the state of Louisiana probably has more expertise to offer with regard to looking at flooding, flood mapping, flood surges, flood protection, and how to build to protect and decrease that risk to protect our communities than any other state in this country. And instead of taking advantage of those opportunities and of that wealth of knowledge, they shut the door on us. And they have doggedly refused to give us the information that would explain to us why these dramatic increases are being imposed on the people of our state and people of other states. So we're very we're happy to announce that we have enormous support in this lawsuit. We are sorry that it had to come to this, and we understand that this is a really, really important issue for everyone on the day that hurricane season begins. We tell all of our people to get a game plan and prepare for hurricane season. What they cannot plan for and what they can't control is the attack of the federal government that's going to take away and force them into bankruptcy or take their homes away and force them into foreclosure. So I want to recognize a couple of people who've been extremely instrumental in getting us to where we are today. First and foremost, I want to recognize Morgan Brungard, who's here in the room today, who helped draft this complaint and bring everybody together. And if you have seen the complaint, we have 43 parishes who've joined us on this lawsuit. We have 10 states who've joined us, and we have 12 levy boards and a couple of municipalities. And I believe that once this is filed, that more will probably come. I want to recognize Dwayne Bourgeois and Corey Keefe, who came to us in January and sat down with us and said, we were really at our wits' end. We don't know what else to do. We've tried and tried. We've worked with the congressional delegation, and in fact, our congressional delegation has worked tirelessly to try and get FEMA to listen and to resolve some of these problems and make this a better program. And they have, again, doggedly refused to answer those questions and to make any changes, even after acknowledging that their metrics and that their algorithms are flawed, that they are based on inaccurate information, and that they have not taken into account the flood protection assets that we have in place. So I want to recognize Corey and Dwayne for their leadership on this issue, because they really brought it to us and put us onto the path that we are where we are today, with all of the people here behind us who actually have been living and breathing this problem and who have tried and tried to explain to FEMA what we've done and to offer them assistance that would make it actually a better program that would actually assist people and provide reasonable flood insurance to them in special flood zones. So I thank Corey and I thank Dwayne for their leadership on this. The complaint itself. The complaint is targeted toward explaining and arguing two kind of big frame issues. One, that we believe FEMA has exceeded its statutory authority and violated the mandate that it was imposed by Congress to provide reasonable flood insurance and make it available to people who couldn't buy it when they were in special flood zones created by FEMA through their own mapping. So that's an important part of this, is the statutory authority and whether they've exceeded the scope of their statutory authority. The second big piece of this are a number of arguments that we make about the arbitrary and capricious nature of what FEMA did. And so that focuses on a whole number of different aspects of the program, one of which includes failing to take into account all of the risk that we have mitigated through the local investment and the local planning and the decisions and independent things that people have done, like taking hazard mitigation money to elevate their homes and subjecting themselves and their property to a property restriction that will forever require them to have flood insurance, and now expose them to FEMA pulling the rug out from under them and pushing them into foreclosure. So I think that all of these, the petition itself is 112 pages. It is long. I won't walk you through all of the details of it. We're happy to provide it to you. We also have an executive summary available to you that lists all the parties, summarizes the claims, and explains basically the background of how we got here. I would like to introduce Michael Hecht. He is the CEO of GNO Inc. He's been enormously helpful, another leader in this space who has helped us to understand, the lawyers to understand what all of the actual flood protection experts have been doing all of this time, and help us build that into a legal complaint. And he's been an enormous leader and has introduced us to the Coalition for Sustainable Flood Insurance and a lot of other people all around the country who continue to ask FEMA to do better by our people. So I will turn it over to Mike.
I'll be brief, but this is making me somewhat nostalgic. Maybe not for a good reason, but 12 years ago we brought together a group of parish presidents and other stakeholders, including I might say Corey and Dwayne. I hate to say it was you haven't aged a bit, like a fine wine. We had an issue with something called Biggert Waters. And then as now, we faced a regime that was going to have the unintended consequences of punishing people that had done nothing wrong. Americans who had paid their taxes, maintained their insurance, had no expectation that their most important asset, by essentially an arbitrary and capricious rule, was going to be, eviscerated. We argued that it was morally wrong. That's easy to understand, but also economically unwise. Because if you think about what happens if people can't stay in their homes, what that does to the workforce, what that does to the banking community, what that does in terms of destruction of value to coastal communities in general, it was economically unwise as well. And so this group grew to be the Coalition for Sustainable Flood Insurance. We had no idea how big it would become, but it grew to be over 250 organizations in close to 35 states. And this group, working with our federal delegation, which was magnificent, and frankly, people from around the country, was ultimately able to get the Flood Insurance Affordability Act of 2014 passed. We have a copy of it signed right over there behind President Miller's back on the wall. And it was signed over the objections of the Obama White House, frankly. They didn't want to do it, but it was such a pocketbook issue, and it was so bipartisan because 50% of America lives and works near water, and they need to be able to do so affordably, that we won. And so I look at the work that we're doing today. I look at this lawsuit, which has 43 parishes, 12 districts, 10 states, others all involved. And I say, we've seen this movie before, and we know how to beat the bad guy. And we're going to do it. And what's so nice about it is that in doing it, we're going to fix flood insurance not just for Louisiana, but for all of America. And that makes this work engaging, that makes this work important. And GNO Inc. is just proud to be a small part of this effort, along with the Coalition for Sustainable Flood Insurance. So, Attorney General, thank you. I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Mike. And really, I can't speak enough about the work that Mike and GNO Inc. have done, not only here to help our legal team put this together, but being able to build such a broad coalition of states, and of course parishes, and we've got levy boards. And I think that those are the things that actually impact the courts more than ever, when they see the amount of people coming before them, united in one, asking for some relief. At this time, I'd like to bring up, I think, the tallest parish president in Louisiana, someone who has also been a leader. Matt Jewell, of course, he's seen it from Washington, D.C. as well. He worked for Congressman, now our Majority Leader, Steve Scalise, for many years when I was in Congress. I remember seeing him. He's kind of hard to miss. But he ended up being the parish president, ran for and won a parish presidency in St. Charles. And of course, after the hurricanes and before, he recognized the risk that parish has to hurricanes and to floods. They've been working to mitigate those disasters, but now his entire workforce, his constituency, those people who go in and out of the refineries that are a lifeblood to Louisiana are now at risk because of this policy. And so, Matt, I'd like to bring you up to say a few words.
Thank you, Attorney General Landry, and thank you to the Solicitor General Liz Muro for helping to lead this effort. I don't know about all of you, but I always feel like we're at war with the federal government somehow. There's always a battle going on, whether it's us trying to restore our coast and the federal government throwing up, all of the environmental reviews and delay tactics and red tape that prevent us from doing that, whether it's bigger waters or whether it's just fighting to get money back after a storm. There's always a battle to be had, and it really shouldn't be that way. And back in 2021, or 2022 rather, in November, St. Charles Parish submitted a FOIA request for the model, the catastrophe model that FEMA used to determine the premiums for St. Charles Parish. And for months we were denied, we appealed and were denied again. And on April 25th of this year, we launched a lawsuit against FEMA to gain access to that model. What we want is transparency. We want to make sure that the model that they have is accurate, and we want to know what they see as our risks. Because on the ground, parish presidents and these leaders behind me want to make sure that we are actually protecting life and property. And all of them have been. We've invested hundreds of millions of dollars and billions of dollars when you look at the system protecting the metro area of New Orleans. And so Southeast Louisiana is safer than we've ever have been. But once again, FEMA keeps moving that goalpost on us. And so now risk rating 2.0 is the next battle. It's the next battle that we'll have to wage. And I'm proud to have the Attorney General leading this effort, fighting for us, fighting for the state of Louisiana. And that goes for the Solicitor General as well. We appreciate you guys fighting with us, and we look forward to winning this battle. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to quickly bring up two parish presidents who I think represent parishes along Louisiana's Gulf Coast who have done more. Those parish residents in both Terrebonne and Lafourche Parish were way ahead of all of us in regards to trying to protect their communities and their constituents. Many years ago, they instituted taxes and started building levees. They didn't wait for the federal government. And so I just quickly like to bring each of them up to say a few words and tell us how important this suit is. I'd like to bring up Terrebonne Parish President Gordy Dove. And then we'll bring up Archie Chasson of Lafourche Parish.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank the Attorney General and Solicitor General Liz Muro for bringing this up. This is crucial to the survival of everyone in Louisiana. As a past chairman of Natural Resources and on the original Coastal Protection Restoration Authority I sat on for 8 years, and now I'm parish president of Terrebonne, we've seen Louisiana and the parishes spend billions of dollars into protecting the people of Terrebonne Parish. And at the last hour, FEMA comes along with the 2.0 rating system, which totally destroyed basically what we've worked for. And it's so important that we move forward with this. And, in 2005, Terrebonne Parish was hit by Rita, so was the rest of the state of Louisiana. And we flooded 11,000 homes in 2005. We started building levees, 80 miles of levees, 14 floodgates, 68 water control structures led by Levee District Director and President Tony Alford. And in 2019, when Barry came along with 9.5 foot of water, the same amount of water that Rita did, there was only 11 homes flooded And that's only because the levee wasn't finished. We went from 11,000 homes flooding, and no one's flooded since. Most homes in Terrebonne Parish has never flooded. So this is crucial. This new rating system is it's defeated everything we've done in the past and everything the state of Louisiana has done in the past. And I'm going to say again, I thank the Attorney General and Solicitor General for bringing this forth, and we're behind them 100%. So as the council voted 100% in favor of it in Terrebonne Parish. Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. This is a very sad day in Louisiana, right? And I'm very proud to stand with Attorney General Jeff Landry and our Solicitor General, Ms. Liz Murrell, to file this lawsuit. But it's sad that we had to get to this point. It's sad that we have to go up against a government who is supposed to represent us and protect us, while simultaneously they take on a risk rating system that is basically going to force our residents to hand back over the keys to their homes and vacate our coastal communities. You know, coastal counties and parishes make up 48% of the nation's population and 50% of the nation's GDP. But yet at every step of the way, we get swatted back and say, you guys don't matter, you guys don't count. You know, we've taxed ourselves in Lafourche Parish since 1985 to build the levee systems that have protected us. When we look at just 2 years ago, Hurricane Ida had devastated our communities, and we had very little water damage, right, because of the investments that we made. But FEMA continually, time and time again, gives us zero credit for that investment. We've put billions of dollars into Lafourche, and up until recently, with the help of Congressman Graves and Majority Leader Scalise, got zero federal investment. It's all come on the backs of us and the state and CPRA. So I'm proud today to stand with our Attorney General in his office as we continue to push back against FEMA and this arbitrary and capricious rule, so we can keep our residents where we need to keep them, so we can keep oil flowing and the great natural resources of seafood spread all over the country, and continue to provide for a country that means so much to all of us. So thank you.
Thank you, Archie. Attorney General, Solicitor General, thank you guys so much. Mike, thank you for having us here. I didn't want to walk away and get into the individual stuff without saying none of us want to be here. I want to reiterate that. We all, most of us, went to Washington, D.C. and met with the decision makers. Absolutely no information out of that meeting. A lot of our levees, Terrebonne and Lafourche, can afford to build their own levees. In St. Bernard, we can't. But no information. What they did was, what we figured out was, they figured out what the rates were before they figured out how high the water had to be before they put their risk out there. They have zero risk because the water level in their model, which we don't know, is so high, and they couldn't they actually pointed up. So it's like Archie said, it's a sad day that we're here. We don't want to be here. St. Bernard Parish, they built a $14 billion structure after Katrina. Now, it was their levee that they fixed because of their Gulf outlet to create a quicker way to the river from the eastern side of Louisiana. $14 billion. Today, we're the fastest growing parish in the state in the last census. At one time, we had the sixth fastest, largest growth in a city in the country. Great things are happening. Great things are happening in my parish. And now we're trying to make people leave. This is basically giving people a reason to leave rather than to stay home. They came home. Thank you, Attorney General.
Thank you. And lastly, I'd like to bring up Corey Keefe with the South Lafourche Levee, just to give you an insight about some of the mitigation things that they've been doing and the experience that they have had with FEMA.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you all for having us here this morning. We certainly appreciate that. Appreciate the efforts of the Attorney General's office and the Solicitor General's office, Jeff and Liz and Morgan, for all her sincere hard work and heavy lifting on this. You know, on TV recently, I saw a friend of mine who's an elected official said these three words: enough is enough. All right, I think we all know who that is, but, you know, I'm going to repeat that. Enough is enough. Over 10 years ago, Dwayne Bourgeois and I began to talk about how come things were the way they were with flood insurance. And I don't remember how this ended up in our lap, but I think that because I'm the president of the Association of Levy Boards, people thought that we were associated with flood insurance. But we really weren't, but we started looking at it and began to say, you know what? If you're talking about flood protection, you're talking about flood insurance, period. So we started looking really closely into this, formed a coalition. Representative Jerome Zarang was involved with us too. And Mr. Michael Heck from New Orleans here with GNO Inc., we all began to talk and this big push started. I'm just going to echo what they're saying is we begged for information, we asked for explanations, in a very arrogant and pompous way, we got bullied. At the end of the day, we got bullied by FEMA. Now, I'm all appreciative of all the things that FEMA does, but I could promise y'all, our delegation in D.C. is fully aware of what we're doing. They have been fully engaged with us to try to make a difference. Our legislature here passed a unanimous resolution to support everything that we're doing. So it's not like we woke up one morning and said, let's sue FEMA. There's been a lot of thought put into this, and there's a lot of details that we could discuss with y'all, but today's just not the place for that. But we'd be happy to have a more intimate discussion with y'all about details. So once again, thank you to the Association of Levy Boards for them supporting me and encouraging me to petition the Attorney General to look at this issue. Thank you to our delegation in D.C. Thanks to the legislature. Thanks to the people in GNO Inc. and everyone up here. And more than anything, thank Dwayne Bourgeois for the heavy lifting that he did. He's the director of the North Lafourche Levy District, and everything that I'll come up here and talk about usually is homework that he did for me. So anyway, I certainly appreciate all those things. And once again, if you're talking about flood protection, you're talking about flood insurance. And I didn't realize it was such a big problem until the guys from Bossier City and Tinsall Parish and Plaquemines to Acadiana. This is a statewide problem. It's not all coastal. So let's forget about this just being specific to a region. A lot of people in the state of Louisiana is being affected by this. A lot more than what you know, a lot more than what you think, but that's the truth. Once again, enough is enough. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you. I want to again thank all of the city officials here in Orleans and Mike Heck and GNO Inc. for hosting us today, and